So as I've already mentioned, today's worship is focused on flower communion, which, as you know, is an annual ritual in many Unitarian Universalist congregations. The idea is for all of us to collect as many beautiful flowers as we can and to create a gorgeous bouquet to symbolize the beauty of human diversity and community. I've been involved in many flower communion services over the years, and this year I found myself asking a new question, and that is, what is beauty after all? I spent a lot of time during the last few weeks trying to answer that question for myself. And you know what? That's one tough question to answer. Is beauty just another word for pretty? What is it that causes a painting to be beautiful? What makes music beautiful? Or dance? Or the gymnastic performance of a Simone Biles? Can silence be beautiful? How about the ethical actions of someone like Václav Havel or Nelson Mandela? Or how about a Norbert Čapek, the man who came up with flower communion in the first place? Is beauty only skin deep? What makes a Mother Teresa, a Wangari Maathai, or an Eleanor Roosevelt so deeply beautiful to so many? Is, in fact, beauty only in the eye of the beholder? Is it totally subjective, or can at times be universally recognized? How does it show up in the world, and how do you know it when you see it? It turns out that all these kinds of questions are as old as recorded history. Many philosophers, including the ancients, have said that the universe itself is called into being by a love of God as beauty, that the whole of creation is yearning towards God. And I wonder if the sense of yearning itself might be an essential aspect of the human appreciation of beauty. Poet Dana Goya describes 4 aspects of the experience of beauty. See if you recognize this process in anything that you have found beautiful in your life. First, he says, it's something that arrests our attention. Then, a thrill of mysterious joy that seems disproportionate to the object's importance to us, followed by a heightened perception of the shape or meaning of things that is linked to a sense of the truth, that we are witnessing the truth. And finally, the moment vanishes. As we stare at the object, the nature of our experience transforms as it transforms us. The Italian historian Ludovico Antonio Muratori said that anything is beautiful if, when seen, heard, or understood, it delights, pleases, and ravishes us. And I wonder if we need to be ravished to truly appreciate beauty. Let's try an experiment. We're going to show you a slide up here on the screen. And if you could just take a look at it for a moment or two and decide for yourself if this is a beautiful picture. Okay, let's take that down. We'll hold on to it though, because we're going to come back to it. And now I'm going to give you some context for that image. That sketch of a flower was the last physical act taken by a 5-year-old girl right before she tragically died of spinal cancer. Now let's put the slide up again. Does that context change your feelings about the image? Does it make it even more beautiful? Does it add a feeling of yearning? Let's listen to a poem called Swan by Mary Oliver. Did you see it drifting all night on the black river? Did you see it in the morning rising into the silver air, an armful of white blossoms, a perfect commotion of silk and linen as it leaned into the bondage of its wings, a snowbank, a bank of lilies biting the air with its black beak? Did you hear it fluting and whistling, a shrill, dark music like rain pelting on the trees, like a waterfall knifing down the black ledges? And did you see it finally, just under the clouds, a white cross streaming across the sky, its feet like black leaves, its wings like a stretching light of river? And did you feel it in your heart? How it pertained to everything? And have you too finally figured out what beauty is for? And have you changed your life? This past week I came across the story of a man who did change his life and the life of his community through an act of beauty. The story was told by Reverend Jen Crow, senior minister of the First Universalist Church in Minneapolis, and I've adapted it for our congregation here. And the story starts out in Gloucester, Ohio. It was formerly a coal mining community that had fallen on hard times. In 2012, a local resident by the name of Jim Cotter lost his wife, and his grief was profound. But he didn't let it overwhelm him. Instead, he set about trying to add some color back into his life as a way of dealing with his distress. He started by deciding to give one of the rusty fire hydrants on his street a new coat of paint. And when he was done, it must have given him a good feeling, because he went around and painted other things. Gradually, he began painting his way through the entire town. He painted houses, he painted businesses, and he did all the work free of charge. He kept at it, and he kept at it. And then something happened. Because the thing is, he wasn't alone anymore. Other residents began volunteering their time and materials, sprucing up the town and its buildings a little at a time. These days, the whole place is looking brighter. It's just amazing what a little paint would do, Jim Cotter said. It began as a distraction from grief, a respite from loss, a simple, fresh coat of paint, something so small, but something powerful. Through the gift of beauty, Jim inspired others to see possibilities that they may have thought were gone, but in fact were still there. He inspired others to pick up their paintbrushes, to do what they could, to participate, to be part of something bigger, something that could heal and inspire not just one person, but a whole community. This story makes me think a little bit about our own Matzel and how he is running around Anaheim beautifying so many buildings with his murals. It's easy to dismiss beauty as something frivolous, something to appreciate or pause once one's real work of life is done. But what if beauty is something more, something life-giving, life-sustaining, life-repairing? What if beauty is nature's way of helping us to fall in love again, to feel a yearning for the goodness in the world, and in each other, so that we might once again care for one another and for this earth. What if beauty holds the power to pull us back from the brink, to remind us that we are deeply connected to each other and to every aspect of the universe? Where do you find beauty? What does it tell you about yourself? How do you include it in your life? There's a story I once heard. Our Unitarian Universalist president of the UUA, former president, Bill Schultz, and when he had finished his term as UUA president, he went on to become head of Amnesty International USA. And he was touring refugee camps around the world. And he came into this one, and it was horrible on so many levels. And it was dirty and grimy, and people didn't have water to wash. And he gave a very vivid description of a woman, and I will spare you the details. But she had a piece of glass on a string around her neck. It was a piece of blue glass. And he asked the translator to ask her what that glass was all about. And she said, in her raggedy clothes and dirty body, she said, "It is my beauty. It is my beauty." Do you believe that beauty can heal, inspire, transform? Norbert Chopek certainly did. He believed that it could. Maybe you know Norbert Chopek's story. I've told it here a couple of times. Or maybe you're brand new to it. It's the story of the origin of flower communion. Maybe you've heard this story on more than one occasion in different spring Sundays in the past, with different flowers and different people, perhaps even at a different church. But that is the beauty of rituals. Even if everything around us changes, even if we change, the story is the same. And newcomers, we welcome you to take part in this tradition. This version of the story comes to us from the Reverend Rika Koffel, who many of you have known from this pulpit in the past. Reverend Norbert Chopek was initially a Baptist minister in Bohemia, that's the Czech Republic today, and in the early 1900s he became increasingly liberal and increasingly outspoken and was forced to leave his home for political reasons. He emigrated to the United States with his family, and in the U.S. came to realize that he no longer had faith in the Baptist doctrines. Instead, he'd come to believe in the inherent goodness of all people and in a loving God. Norbert Chopek was not just an outspoken liberal theologian grappling with his faith. He was a father. He wanted his children to grow up in a religious community. While Norbert believed in religion, he did not agree with the way that many churches viewed God. So he visited a lot of churches to find one that he liked. And after every service, Norbert would quiz his children at lunchtime about what they had learned in Sunday school class. And every time, he was disappointed. They weren't learning about the goodness of humanity or about a loving God. So the next week, they would try a different church. One day, they went to the service at the First Unitarian Church of Essex County in New Jersey, which happens to be in the county where I lived and worked before Rob and I moved to California. At that church, as usual, his children went off to their religious education classes, and afterwards he sat them down and asked them what they had learned. He was amazed. This church taught children that they were good and full of promise. It spoke of a loving God, but you didn't have to believe in God if you didn't want to. So the next Sunday, they all came back. And they kept coming back. And not long after that, Norbert became a Unitarian minister. But Norbert missed his home, and after World War I, he was full of hope for his home country, the place called Czechoslovakia. He and his family returned there in the hope that it could become inclusive, progressive, and peace-loving, like his beloved Unitarian Church. He served there as a Unitarian minister, and it was there that he came up with the idea of flower communion, a ritual intended to represent a new way of being in the world, a way for people to join together to create beauty after the devastation of war, a way of being that was peaceful, loving, hopeful, and free. The first time Chapek held the flower communion, it brought the congregation to tears. Chapek continued this ritual for 15 years. However, in 1938, the Nazis invaded Czechoslovakia. What had been a budding, progressive country was thrown into the chaos of war. Norbert's wife, Maya, a Unitarian minister in her own right, and their younger children went back to the United States. But Norbert and his daughter, 29-year-old Zora, stayed on. They were arrested for listening to BBC broadcasts and for sharing that information with others. It was against the law to listen to foreign broadcasts. Zora was eventually released, but Norbert was considered, and this is a quote from documents that we have, he was considered too dangerous to the Reich to be allowed to live. He was sentenced to Dachau concentration camp and was killed along with so many others there. It was Zora who would bring the flower communion to the U.S. and spread this ritual, sharing it with the people of many UU churches and with us. Years later, people asked Zora, why did your father choose the flower as a symbol? She said, because, unlike other religious symbols, no one ever started a war because of a flower. This ritual, this tradition, handed down to us by courageous souls who went before us, is now 103 years old. Knowing this history, this context, does it make these flowers even more beautiful than they were? Today, we honor and celebrate the courage, steadfastness, and vision of Norbert and Zora. Today, we worship, we celebrate their values and qualities, and the spirit that is alive and grows in each of us when we come together to bring our vision and our ideals to life. Having blessed these flowers early in the service, it is now time for us to share in the flower communion. So I'll give you some instructions. I ask that each of you, in turn, come up to the communion vases, but that you do so quietly, reverently, with a sense of the beauty and the meaning that they hold, and the beauty that is in each and every one of us, and how important it is, therefore, that we address our world and one another with gentleness, justice, and love. I ask that you select a flower different from the one you brought, that particularly appeals to you. And even if you didn't bring any, there's plenty for all. As you take your chosen flower, note its particular shape and beauty, maybe in a meditative way, and remember to handle it carefully. It's a gift that someone has brought to you. It represents that person's unique humanity, and therefore deserves your kindest touch. So I ask that you line the central aisle and then go back to your seats around the other way. And please come up and take a flower in silence. That beautiful native plant garden that is now in bloom. So if you go out the back doors and to your right, you can catch a glimpse of those beautiful flowers. In closing, let me offer you the words by Reverend Richard Gilbert. May the blessings of the flowers be upon you. May their beauty beckon to you each morning, and their loveliness lure you each day, and their tenderness caress you each night. So may it be.